Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you my top 10 favorite eyeshadow palettes. Eyeshadow palettes are my favorite makeup item to buy. I feel like that's where you can get the most creative with your makeup looks. You can do all kinds of different things with them, and you can use them for not just eyeshadow but for face products as well, which I'll be talking a little bit more about. These range in all different price points, and these are just my go-to palettes that I've used most often and have been the most impressed with. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one I want to talk about is actually the one that I used today. This is the Colourpop x Kathleen Lights Dream Street palette. I use this to do this makeup look. It is a very beautiful palette. I just really like all of the colors that she put together, and the blendability of this product has been very, very impressive. I've used this quite a few times. This shadow in particular is my favorite, which you can see there. It is so pretty. That is Mermaid Boy. And I've just found that you can do a lot of different makeup looks. You can do an all blue look, a red look, mix them together. You can do an all neutrals look. It's just a really, really great palette. And for the price point, I think this was like $12 or $13. You really can't beat it for this amount of shadows. The next one that I want to talk about is the Huda Beauty Mauve Obsessions palette. This is just a little mini palette which she put together. She's got like 4 of them, I think. The brights, the smoky, I think like a neutral or a red warm toned one, and then this one. And this one's my absolute favorite. I love mauve shades. They're really my tones. I actually used this on my wedding day. I used this to create the eye look that I did, and it's just a very pretty palette. You can blend them really well. They're very, very pigmented, and I just think that you can do a lot of different looks even though this palette is so small. Something that I like about this is that you can use this to travel with. It is perfect to just put in your makeup bag and you don't even have to think about it. And you can just really do a lot of different things with just this palette alone. I also like the unwasted space in this palette. A pet peeve of mine is wasted space in an eyeshadow palette. I cannot stand when there is a bunch of space in this palette with just a couple of little tiny eyeshadows that you could have put so much more product and gotten so much more bang for your buck. And this one, she really did that because these are full-size eyeshadows. They're not any tinier. There's just less wasted space in it, which I really, really like. The next palette I'm going to talk about is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. This has been a super popular palette, and I actually wasn't going to buy this at first because it's very warm toned, which is not usually for me. I don't usually like warm toned palettes, but this one in particular I thought would be very universal for more neutral looks. I thought I could take this to travel with, which I do. I take this when I'm traveling because it is very universal. I can do so many different things with it. There's some pops of color, but also these nice neutral shades. The shimmers are beautiful. The mattes blend out so well. These are powdery shadows. Anastasia makes like a more powdery shadowed formula, but I really like that formula. This is probably one of my favorite eyeshadow formulas, and I just found that I've used this palette so many times. I've used this on my sister for prom makeup. It's just a really, really perfect palette, and I found myself reaching for it so many times since I've bought it. The next palette I want to show you guys is the Makeup Geek x Manny MUA palette. I got this a long time ago, like when it first came out, and I love it. I think that this color combination is perfect. I've used every single one of these shades, and you can do so many different looks with it. This purpley brown shade down here I've used tons of times. Like, I'm actually making my way through it pretty good. This shade right here is a duochrome. This one is Insomnia. I'm gonna swatch it for you guys so you can see the duochrome beautifulness. It's like a red, green, blue shift. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. And this shade up here is a perfect highlighting shade. You can do an entire eye look with this. You can use this to complement other palettes. I just think that this was a perfect palette for me to purchase, and I waited online for this palette for like hours because there was like problems with the checkout or something like that, but it was totally worth it. I waited forever for it, and I love it so much. The Makeup Geek shadows are really a nice eyeshadow if you are looking for like a decent price point. And you get a lot of product in them. So this was definitely a beautiful, great palette for me to purchase. And the next palette I want to talk about is the Too Faced Chocolate Gold palette. The Too Faced Chocolate Bar palettes have been like a big collection for a long time. The original Chocolate Bar is a wonderful palette. I've actually repurchased it because I have used so many shades from it. It's a beautiful neutrals palette. The Semi-Sweet palette, the Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette was okay. Not as good as the original Chocolate Bar, but still okay. And then I bought the Too Faced Chocolate Bar Bonbons palette, and that was not as good as the original Chocolate Bar. And then I've just found that there have been some discrepancies in the Too Faced eyeshadow formula. So then when this one came out, I was a little skeptical to buy it, but I thought that the color options in it, it's, sorry if it's like very reflective, it's a very shiny palette, but the color combination was just what really drew me to this, and the amount of shimmer shades in this. I love shimmer shades, and it's got 4 matte shades in it, but it's got the transition, a brown, a black, and a white. That's what you need. Those are essential matte shades, and you can go, you can do an entire look with just those matte shades, and then you can add any of these shimmers to them. And so I just really, really like it. And when I started using this, I was immediately impressed, because this is exactly, if not better than the original Chocolate Bar formula. The mattes blend out really nice. The shimmers are super pigmented. Let me just swatch this famous shade for you. And you can see, like, that was just one swipe, very pigmented, beautiful. I was impressed when I bought this palette, and I've reached for it so many times since then. And so if you were going to get a Chocolate Bar palette, I would highly, highly recommend this one. Okay, the next palette that I want to talk about is the Colored Raine Queen of Hearts palette. This is the outer sleeve. I wish that this packaging was on the outer sleeve. The outer sleeve is just matte black packaging. And then this is what the palette looks like. It is so, so beautiful. I love that you can do warm tones, cool tones, neutrals, pops of color. These pink shades are beautiful. This Royal Princess shimmery shade I've used so many times because it's just stunning on the lid. These shades are truly a wonderful formula. They blend out beautifully without blending away the pigment, and I have just found that I've reached for this palette so many times. Colored Raine originally had this as a limited edition palette, but they have more recently brought it back as a permanent addition to their collection, which I'm really glad that they did, because this is a palette that I think that everyone should have in their collection. It's truly beautiful. I bought this after Jaclyn Hill used it and recommended it, and I have not been disappointed with it. So the next palette I want to talk about is the Kat Von D Metal Matte palette. This is what it looks like. This is a pretty hefty palette. It's very long. As you can see, it says metal, but then when you flip it around, it says matte. It's very interesting. I really, really like that palette. But this is what the inside of it looks like. It is very universal. There are a lot of shades in this, and there's a row down here of all mattes, and then the tops are all shimmers. They have like a coordinating color scheme going on, because they've got like this shade here that can go with these shades here, and then the blues that can go with the blues, and it's a really, really cool palette. These matte shades are very pigmented, and the overall shade range is really what attracted me to this palette, because there's a lot of different colors that you can use. I use this velvet shade here a lot, and then I also use ribbon and linen down here, and I've also used these shimmery shades quite a few times. But the Kat Von D shadows are really, really pigmented. They blend out pretty nicely, and I just really, really like them. So I really liked this palette when it came out. There's a lot of shades. This was a limited edition. She might bring this back, but she also might not. So it's not available anymore, but I would highly recommend Kat Von D shadows. And the next palette I want to talk about is, this one might surprise people. This is the Kylie Cosmetics birthday palette. Kylie Cosmetics is a good brand to me. I have liked her lip products. The only product that I have not liked is her highlighters. I really don't like those. But her shadows, I like them. They're similar to the Anastasia formula. Not exactly. The Anastasia formula is better. But these are very similar. And I like this palette a lot. This has these shadows up here. And then it's got a highlighter and a blush down here. The highlighter, I love. The blush, I love. And these shadows, this is a really great palette to travel with. I actually used some of these shadows as well on my wedding day. And the pigment is actually pretty impressive. And then the mattes are pretty pigmented as well, and they blend out nicely. That is what really attracts me to this palette, is how easily these are to work with. They blend out perfectly. This is a very nice palette to do a quick and easy look with. You can take this on the go. I really, really like it. And I've used it quite a few times since I've gotten it. And then another palette that I have loved is the Lorac Mega Pro 3. The Lorac Mega Pro palettes are very large. This is how big they are. They come with a lot of different shadows, and the shadows are small, but there's a very wide selection of shadows in here. This one I really, really like because it's got like a more of a rose gold theme, and rose gold tones are really the ones that I gravitate towards. This is a really perfect palette to take with you somewhere because even though it is a little bit larger, it's got everything that you could possibly need. You could take this palette alone and get a lot out of it. The shades are very buttery. They're very, very soft, very pigmented, and you can just do a lot with these palettes, and that's what I like about them. They're very good for you know, creating nice artistic looks, and so the quality is really, really there as well. Lorac shadows are always pretty good, so I just really like that palette. And then the last palette that I'm going to talk about today is the Juvia's Place Masquerade palette. I just want to show you all of the Juvia's Place palettes because they're going to get like an honorable mention. These are all of the ones that I have. I have quite a few of them. This is my all-time favorite eyeshadow formula. This is the Masquerade palette. This is the one that I would say that I use the most. These pans are huge. This palette's huge. It's like bigger than my head. These pan sizes are ginormous. This comes in like a mini size, which has like smaller pan sizes, but this one is humongous. It's perfect. I used this shade, the Giza shade, to highlight my face today, and it is stunning. The pigment is just like out of this world. Really, it truly is. And then they're so soft. They almost feel like a cream. And then the matte shades are really buttery as well. They're very, very, very soft and pigmented. And I just find that this formula is the easiest to work with. You get so much pigment. You get so much bang for your buck because these are cheap palettes. I paid like $20 something, like $22 I want to say, for this palette, and look how many shadows you get. And there's so much product, and you don't have to use a lot of the shadows. I've used this palette countless times, and it looks like I haven't even barely touched it because you just don't need a lot because there's a lot of pigment to them. And so I'm just going to quickly show you the rest of my Juvia's Place palettes as well because this formula is just my favorite. It was very hard to narrow down a favorite palette out of these Juvia's Place ones because they're just all really great. This is the Deuce palette, which is, this pink is beautiful. I really, really like this palette as well. And then the Zulu palette, if you're looking for a nice bright eyeshadow palette with lots of color, this is definitely the one that I would recommend to you because the pigment, out of this world. They're not chalky, and it's hard to get a nice pigmented bright without making it chalky. And then this is the Saharan 2, which I would also highly recommend because this is a more like neutral palette. They have a Nubian palette, which is all neutrals and like brown tones. So if you're looking for a straight neutral palette, they have one. They've got colors. Then they have this Magic palette, which is a great palette as well because you've got a lot of warm tones up here and cool tones down here. You can do a lot with all of these palettes, and the formula is all the same, and they have sales quite often. They have discount codes with different influencers, and so these palettes, I got 2 of these palettes for like $38. So that's like, you really can't beat it because most of the other palettes that I've talked about are more expensive than both of these combined. So this is a really a great way to go for an eyeshadow palette. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I enjoyed filming it. I really like talking about eyeshadow palettes. They're my favorite thing to collect. I have quite a few of them, so narrowing it down to 10 was very difficult. But I hope that this helped you guys maybe decide on some new palettes that you'd like to try, and maybe some new brands, maybe some brands that you haven't even heard of. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. Thanks.